Hey everyone, welcome to the Getting Started course for ON1 Photo RAW 2025. In this first lesson, we're going to get up and running. We're going to first navigate into a folder. We're going to find an image, and then we're going to take that image into the edit module, and we're going to start modifying it. So let's dive in here. We're inside of ON1 Photo RAW 2025, and the first thing I'm going to do is just navigate into a specific folder. To find folders, we can head over here to the left side of our screen, and we can go into this local drives pane. Now inside of Photo RAW, these panes may be hidden, and so if they're hidden like this, just click on it and it will open them up. If this area, this whole left side isn't showing up, it may be hidden as well, which you can modify with this little icon down at the bottom left, where I can show or hide that left pane. So I'm in my local drives here. This is going to show any SD cards or hard drives that you have plugged into your computer, but it also has your computer's hard drive as well. So I'm just going to go into my documents folder here. I can roll open these folders as needed. And I'm just going to navigate to a folder I created for getting started. So I'll just choose getting started here. And I have this group of photographs. So once you've found an image, you can quickly take it into the edit module to start processing it and styling it by just selecting the photograph. And we're going to go over to the edit icon here. We're going to select this. And that's going to take us into the edit module. Inside of the edit module, this is where we're going to be processing the look of our photo. So before we start processing it, let's just take a look at some of the commonly used areas inside of the edit module when we're processing our images. This left-hand side here, this is going to house all of the different tools you can use to modify the look of your image. Now, if you're not sure what a tool does, you can always hover over it, and it will give you a short description, a little video with the tool in action, and also the keyboard shortcut that you can use to access it quickly. If you want a video on how to use it more in depth, just go to this Learn How option. Now, some of these tools I can select, and for example, if I select Retouch, within this retouching tool category, I have other tools that I can navigate to. To access those tools, I'm going to go up to this top toolbar here, and I can navigate to them within this little drop-down menu. Now for this image, let's just first start by cropping the photograph. So I'm going to go to my crop tool here, which I can also grab by hitting C on my keyboard. Now once I've navigated to a specific tool that I want to use, I can modify that tool and how it works with this top tool modifier bar here. So you can see in the crop tool, we have different menus that we can use to modify our crop tool. We have different overlays that we can use. And we also have aspect ratios that we can use as needed. Now for this image here, I want to level the image. I don't think I'm going to crop it any, but I do want to level it. I can see that the horizon line here is a little bit crooked. So there's a couple of different ways that we can do that. We can hover over this top corner or any of the different corners, and we can click and drag up or down to rotate. Or we can simply grab this level tool here. We can click on that, and we can just click and drag across the horizon line, create a straight line there. And then once we drop it, it will immediately level our photograph. So once we're done with the crop tool, we can accept the crop by just clicking on this little blue check mark. And now we've cropped our photograph. Now, on this right-hand side of Photo RAW, this is what we're going to be using to modify the look of our photograph. We're going to be using different sliders over here to modify various exposure settings, contrast settings, things like that within our image. Now, the most common thing we're going to be using, or most common tab that we use inside of Photo RAW, is this Develop tab here. Inside of the Develop tab, it contains a few different panes here. We have Brilliance AI, which we can use to automatically develop our image's settings. We have Tone and Color, which we can use to modify those settings manually. We have Noise and Sharpening if we need to reduce noise or sharpen our image. And then we have lens correction and then transform. Now with transform, we can use this to modify the scaling and also the framing and composition of our image. Now let's just start out by making it really easy, and we'll just use Brilliance AI here to automatically adjust our image's tone and color settings for us. What Brilliance AI is going to do is it's going to take a look at our image, it's going to identify specific regions within the scene, and it's going to automatically adjust these tone and color settings for us. So let's just open this up, and I'll enable this there by just selecting that. And you can see it's automatically modified the look of our photograph. Now within the Brilliance AI tool here, we have this amount slider which we can use to modify the strength of the Brilliance AI in action. So if we don't want it as strong or we want it a little bit stronger, we can modify that here within that amount slider. Now keep in mind, it's going to be modifying your tone and color. So inside of our tone and color, if I open that up, you can see it's adjusted the tone settings, and it's also modified some of the color settings. And in Brilliance AI here, we can fine tune to either eliminate the color modifications, eliminate the tone modifications, or modify the strength of each. So if we want the tone settings a little bit less strong, we can modify that there. Or if we want to adjust the color settings, we can do that within this color amount slider. Now another thing that Brilliance AI does besides automatically adjusting the tone and color settings is it goes in and it creates local adjustments based on regions within the image. So for this image, it's gone in and it's identified the sky and the water. And within this bottom section here, we have those two regions which we can modify with these two sliders. So if I pull up on the sky, it's going to darken up that sky a bit and give it a little bit more contrast and detail. And as I pull up on the water, it's going to cool it down a little bit. Now within either of these local adjustments here, if you want to modify the settings of the local adjustments that are applied, you can go into your local adjustments tab, and you can see that we have these local adjustments created, and it's already masked in these adjustments into specific regions. Or you can go into this local adjustments section here, and you can just select this arrow next to the region. It will take you into that specific local adjustment, where you can then play around with the settings as needed. I'll just make it a little bit stronger here so that we can really see the difference. Now, if you're looking to modify your image manually, you can always go in and adjust those sliders manually. You don't actually have to use Brilliance AI to automatically adjust that tone and color for you. You can modify these things manually if needed. So I'm just going to turn off Brilliance AI. So we're at the original look of our photograph, and we can go into our tone and color settings here, and I can modify these sliders manually. So for me, this image is a little bit too bright for the mood that I'm going for. I want it a little bit darker, and I want to add in a little bit more contrast to make things a little bit more moody and dramatic. So I'm going to pull back on the exposure quite a bit, and that's just going to bring back a lot of that detail within the imagery here. Now, because I'm removing exposure, I'm eliminating some of the pop and contrast within the scene. So let's bring in some contrast here. Maybe a little bit of my midtones to pull up on those middle grays within the scene. And then from there, I'm going to use this white slider here. Now, whenever I'm using my whites slider, I like to use the J key on my keyboard to show me my clipping warnings. So if I hold down the J key on my keyboard, I can pull up on this white slider, and if it gets too strong, or I pull up on too many of those whites, or I make things a little bit too bright here, and we'll just pull up on the exposure a little bit to show that. If I make things too bright while I'm showing my clipping warnings with that J key, I can see any of the clipping within the scene with this red overlay. That's showing me all of the true white within my image without any detail. So typically when I'm modifying whites or my exposure settings, I like to use that J key on my keyboard so that I can see any of those clipping warnings. It's also going to show you your shadow clippings as well. So if I pull back on this black slider, we'll just pull back on the exposure a bit too. And we'll add in some contrast so that we can see some true black without any detail. You can see with that blue overlay, that's showing me all of the true black without any detail within my scene, my shadow clippings. And you can see that again just by holding the J key on your keyboard. And it's just really helpful, especially when you're modifying these sliders manually and you're dealing with bright areas within your photograph. You can see your highlight and your shadow clippings. But I'm just going to remove some of the exposure again, maybe add in some contrast, boost the midtones a bit, and then I'll pull up on my whites to make things a little bit more contrasted and make the scene pop a bit more. So now that I've modified my tone section here, let's go down into our color and let's just warm things up a little bit. The water was looking a little bit too cool for my liking, and so I just used my temperature slider there to warm things up within the scene. One thing you can do with the temperature slider that's really helpful, especially when you're looking to adjust for any color casting, is you can actually use this color dropper here. You can select this, and then you can go to an area of your scene that is a neutral tone. So this area right here, we can select this, and it's gone in and it's modified the color temperature for me. So let's check out our original image by just hitting the backslash key on our keyboard. Just hold down the backslash key. We can see our original and then after. And I'm liking it. I think it looks much better than before. It's a little bit more dramatic, has a lot more contrast, and it fits that stormy vibe of the scene. So now that we've modified our basic develop settings, let's go in and let's modify our effects. Let's add in some filters to style the image. So within the effects tab here, this is going to be our one-stop styling station inside of Photo RAW. So in the effects tab, all we have to do to add in filters is just choose add filter. Within this filters dialog, this is going to show all of the filters inside of Photo RAW that we can use to apply to our image. Now, if we're not sure what a filter does, we can just hover over the filter. It will give us a short description and a photograph with a before and after with that filter used. So for example, with dynamic contrast. Dynamic contrast adds clarity, also known as tonal contrast, to your photo, making it pop. So what dynamic contrast does is it goes in and it enhances the details and textures within your image to make the scene pop a bit more. We have antique. Gives your photo an aged look similar to the early photographic processes. So we can use these different filters to style the look of our image. One of my favorite filters is the glow filter. I like the glow filter because it brings in this soft, dreamy look, and it's really awesome for images like this where we have silky smooth water. Now, inside of any of the filters that you apply in Photo RAW, there's going to be these different sections. There's going to be the opacity section, styles, and then there's going to be sections that allow you to modify that specific filter. What I like to do with these filters in Photo RAW, if I'm not sure what they're doing, is I like to go into the style section. I'll open up this more menu, and I can browse through all of the different styles that come pre-built into that specific filter. So you can see that some of these, especially Orton Clean or Orton Here's a Hue, really dramatic glow in our imagery. And so we can play around with these different styles and see which one works best for our photo. I think I'm just going to use darker. It's one of my favorites here. If I turn this off and on by toggling this little icon off and on, I can see that it's adding in a nice dreamy glow into the image. Now within our effects tab, we can add as many filters as we need to. So let's add in maybe another filter to deal with the corners, and we can darken them up to focus the viewer's attention into the center of the scene. I'll add a filter, and let's just add a vignette filter. And just like I did before with the glow filter, I'm going to go to this more menu here, and let's see about some of these different vignettes for our image. Kind of like the strong one. I think it gives a nice dramatic feel, but I also like this big softy because it's really just a soft vignette that allows the viewer's attention to focus itself into the center of the scene, and it removes these bright corners from my photo. So you can see that we've added in two different filters into our image to style it, and they're both doing different things. The glow filter is modifying that soft, dreamy feel within the image, and then the vignette is darkening up the corners to focus the viewer's attention into the center of the frame. So let's check out our before and our after. So we have the original, and then we have after. And I think we've done a great job at achieving that dramatic, moody look for this stormy capture. Now, within the Effects tab, we can create presets to save the stack of filters that we've created. So let's say we really like this glow and vignette combo. We can create a preset that we can then apply to other images and apply that same style. So in the Effects tab here, let's just use this little arrow here that's into a rectangle. We'll just select that. And in this Save Preset dialog here, we can create our preset for the effects that we applied to this image. So in this menu here, we can use this to create a brand new category if needed, or we can add it into a category that we've already created. So I'm just going to go into my custom preset looks here, and it looks like I misspelled that, so I'll fix that in a second, but I'm just going to use this category that I've already created, this custom preset looks, and I'll just rename this glow vignette. Now in this section here, this is what we're going to use to apply various settings into our preset. So for me, I don't want my develop settings to carry over, and I don't want my local adjustments to carry over. I just want the Effects tab. I just want these two filters to carry over into that preset. Now you can enable these other options here, and it will carry over those settings into your preset. But again, I'm just going to use the effects here. So I'll choose the effects there, and we'll just save that. And so I'll just eliminate those effects there, and I'll open up my presets, which I can do by heading into this bottom left section and selecting this icon. Now I can go into my custom preset looks. I'll actually right click this here, and I'll rename this to fix my spelling error. So now it's custom preset looks and not custom preset looks. And I can go into my custom preset looks here, and I have a couple that I've already built, but we'll just use that glow vignette option there. I'll select it, and you can see it's applied that preset with those filters that I've added right into the image, and we're back to that look that we had before. So now that we've modified the look of our image, let's say we want to export this image into a specific folder and with a specific file type. So to do that, I'm going to head over here and just close up my preset drawer there. And to export, we'll just head to the bottom right and we'll choose export. This will pull up this export dialog here. And within our export dialog, let's focus first on the export options on the right-hand side. This is going to allow us to use custom export options for whatever we're exporting. This first section here is naming. So I can name my file. I'll just name this Stormy Water Edit. And if I need to, I can add a token onto the end. This is really helpful. For example, if you're using multiple photographs or you want a specific sequence, you can use this add token option for those. You can also use metadata. So if you want to add in specific metadata from that file, you can add that in there as well. With destination, this is where you can choose where you want that photo to be exported into. I typically use ask when exporting so that it asks me every time where I want that image to be exported into, but you can use desktop, you can choose a specific folder, or you can use the same folder as the original. Below that we have file type. This is where we can choose a specific file type for our image there. Now I typically use JPEG when I'm modifying these images and I've already processed them. I'll just use a JPEG to quickly get that file over to a specific folder that I can then share or upload to my social media. But You can use any of these different file types as needed. Below that, we have resize if we need to resize it and enlarge it. And then we have sharpening if we need to sharpen the image. We have metadata, and then we can add in a watermark if needed as well. But I'm just going to keep it basic. I'm just going to use basic file name, stormy water edit, ask when exporting, and then I'll use this file type. Now, let's say we want to export this image into multiple different file types. We can then use export presets. So on this left-hand side, let's say we want this image as a PNG and a JPEG into the same folder that we're working in. We can enable the JPEG to same folder, PNG to same folder, and then once we export, it's going to export with these settings. It's going to export that image into a JPEG and a PNG, and it's going to place those two different file types into the same folder that we're working in. Now, with our export presets, we can save settings as a preset. So let's say we want to save this ask when exporting option as a preset. We can just choose save as preset, and I'll just pick ask when exporting JPEG. So now I can always go in and just choose this option here. It's going to take these same settings for my exporting, and then I can then use that export preset to export this image into that specific file type there. So that's how to find a photograph within a specific folder, take it into the edit module, and process the image. Let's jump into the next lesson where we learn how to import images and then organize them a bit.